Alright, this video's for a dude named Don. He hit me up on Gear Sluts asking about a couple of things. This will be about, I guess, the presets and stuff that I've made in Studio One. I like to use Studio One for this. I don't know about the other DAWs, but Studio One's pretty easy after you get it all set up. So let's start off. I'll show you kind of the routing that I've got set up here. This is my mixing template. Really all that matters to me in my mixing template is the USB play, this area here, and then the USB record, and my AFX in and AFX out. So what I've done here is USB play 1 and 2. I always just keep it the same way. Is my main left, my main right. It's set up the same way in my mixer every time. It's just kind of uniform that way. Now I've renamed the stuff after main left and main right, or it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, basically like that. But I did it for a particular reason so that I could keep all my numbers and all that stuff corresponding to each other. So what I've done here is, and this will make sense in a minute when I show you why, but after main left, main right, which are 1 and 2, I've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 20. I'm really only using the 16, and then these last two at the end are my mono switches, which it doesn't really matter for what we're doing right now, but I use it for something else. So I take those and I route 1 through 16 to 1 through 16 on AFX in. Boom, just like that. The idea is that those are 1 through 16 are coming out of my DAW and going in to my effects. So this is when I'm routing things out of the DAW through the effects, using them to mix. So after I route them into my AFX in, just like I was saying in the other video, they go to the AFX out. And where does that go? Well, that needs to come back in to USB record. But I've already got the first couple of channels on the USB record taken up. I'm not really doing anything with them, but I like to keep my numbers corresponding. You'll see why that makes sense when we get into Studio One. Anyway, that's pretty much what I do for the routing purposes for my mixing. I'm still using the mixer, the actual mixer, to do this. This whole mix channel thing has to do with the tutorial, but let's take a look at Studio One and what I'm doing in here. First of all, let's take a look at my routing. So if I go into my routing setup, now I've got the routing set up in a bunch of different ways for a bunch of different things. If we start at the top, you're going to see AFX in, all this kind of stuff. This first section, AFX in, 1 through 20 basically, or whatever. Not using that right now. That's for recording. This part of it where I've got all this stuff labeled, these different amps, this is for my reamping, which I'll get to in a different video, but I have it set up to where I can just shoot it out to the Antelope software and reamp any of these amps. It's pretty sweet. And then actually, I'm sorry, I said the beginning part was for recording. That's actually for just applying individual effects, not stereo channels. For mixing, this part is for recording. This is where I have all my inputs from the Zen Tour. And this is what I really want to talk about. This is my stereo inputs, as you can see. And these correspond to the same inputs that I have in the routing in the Zen Tour. So you can see stereo 1 and 2 is 3 and 4. And if we go back and look at this on the inputs, which would be USB record, 1 and 2 is 3 and 4. It's the same thing. Just trying to keep everything uniform, but I also have these first two slots in the USB play and the USB record taken. I'm already doing stuff with those. So if we go back to this, that's how it works on the input. Now you have inputs and outputs. So you have to make sure that all that stuff is synced up and is uniform between your interface and your DAW. Same thing in this. The top part of it all has to do with other things that I'm doing. We'll get to that later. But if you get down to the bottom, same thing. Stereo 1 and 2, 3 and 4, down to 15 and 16. So that's kind of how you want to have it set up, or at least the way that I have it set up. You can do whatever you want, but this seems to work best for me. And if you have any questions, you can ask me about it, but I'll show you why this works right now. So if I do this, if I want to send, shit, I ain't get them all. If I want to send all the drums to a bus, and I want to send the drum bus through a set of effects from the Antelope FPGA stuff, I can go here and go to the PreSonus plugins, go to Pipeline Stereo. Probably gonna want to use stereo if I'm using all the drums, because it's I got them all panned and stuff. What I'm gonna do with this plugin, basically this sends it out and then brings it back in. So similar to routing hardware gear. So if you were to hook up a compressor, a hardware compressor, or a hardware EQ, it would send it out and it would bring it back in. And there's going to be a certain amount of latency when you do this type of thing. So that's why they give you this ping option. So you hit ping. All right. Well, right now I don't have anything applied to it, but I've made some presets here. So I have mastering and I have stereo mixing. And since this is a stereo channel, I guess, I'm only seeing my stereo mixing stuff. I have some other presets set up and I'll show that later. But for stereo mixing, let's say we want to send all the drums to a stereo bus and through the Antelope, everything. I've set up a few things here. I've gotten away from that now because Antelope has so many different versions of compressors and EQs and all that stuff. Now I'm just starting to label it AFX like 15 and 16. So if I put on AFX 15 and 16, I haven't really set this one up, but I'll show you how to do it. I'm going to go to stereo 15 and 16. 15 and 16. And if you'll notice, those correspond correctly because I'm not using the first two. It's actually out 17 and 18 and out 17 and 18. But if I go to here, when I go to my effects, I want it to line up the same way. So if I'm using 15 and 16 in Studio One, I want it to be the same thing as 15 and 16 here. So let's go back here real quick. I'll show you how this works. So I hit ping. All right. So it gives you like the kind of a waveform of what you're looking at here, and then you change the basically the latency or the sample. Here we go. See, now I'm pretty damn close. All right, so then we go back in to here. All right, so I want to throw on the I don't know, compressor. Let's go with like a 176 or whatever. And in order to show you how this works, let's bring this down a little bit so that you can see the meter here when it moves. All right, so if I hit reping, see that? It's making that move. And what you want to do is line up the waveform that you see here so that you're compensating for the latency. That way it's not coming in at a different time. And that's the whole idea of the pipeline plugin, is it's sending it out to hardware gear and bringing it back in. You want to compensate for that latency. That's basically the way that you apply these effects. And there's no certain way to do it that I've found. You know, you just kind of move it around until you get it close, and get it as close as you possibly can. And I'm not doing it very good right now, but I mean, that's getting closer, but you get the idea. And you got to play around with it a little bit to get it right. But when you get it right, it sounds damn good when you send your stuff through the FPGA AFX. Anyway, that's pretty much how that part of it works. If you have any other questions about it, you can comment on here and I'll get back to you.